For just 1,000 pesos or 20 US dollars, which will almost definitely get cheaper because of its younger brother's arrival, the Moondrop Space Travel promises everything at a cheap price: ANC, transparency mode, app controls, and a great sound. But here's the twist: I wouldn't recommend it, because in the world of TWS's, sound isn't everything. It's the convenience and features that make it worth your while. Let me show you exactly why I don't love it so much. First, let's start with unboxing. 1.75 out of 5 experience, as one, the packaging is this thin plastic wrap with another thin plastic piece protecting the case at the front. And speaking of the case, you'll need a separate case. These are made out of acrylic and it will scratch if you so much as breathe on them. Beneath that, you also get a smaller box with 3 extra tips in a plastic bag and a short Type-C cable for charging. Further down, you'll find the usual Moondrop paperwork, and that's pretty much it, which is fine for the price, unless of course you factor in the weak case magnets, more to that later, the cheap feeling ear tips, and the fact that you can't easily swap the tips because of the nozzle shape, which then leads us up to the most important bit, which is going to be the build, the comfort, and the shape. For the most part, it's a 4 out of 5 experience where the build is all plastic, which is 100% fine. The plastic construction feels durable and light. Seam lines are also mostly seamless, but there is no IP rating, which is honestly what you'd expect for this price range. Comfort-wise, the Space Travel with the soft touch plastic and stem shape is small enough to fit average size ears like mine, but really small ears might feel discomfort or pain and might get an unsecure fit. I honestly had a pleasant experience when using these. Now, for what everybody is talking about, the sound. 3.5 out of 5. What you essentially get out of the box is 3 EQ profiles, with the reference profile being the default profile that you get. It has boosted sub bass and bass, where this essentially translates to the sound having a much more enjoyable bass response that allows for songs like In the Club by 50 Cent and All the Stars by Kendrick Lamar to have a deeper, fun sounding bass. For reference, this is how those songs will sound if I isolate the frequencies that are boosted.
Go, go, go. Go, go, go.
Lower mids are also boosted, which contributes the sound feeling fuller without being mushy and messy. For reference, this is how All the Stars will sound like if I isolate the 250Hz range. Mids follow the Harman 2019 target, which allows for the vocals to sound clear, with the upper mid-range having a boost in the 2.6K Hz, which contributes to the vocal clarity that these provides. Here's how the 2.6K Hz will sound like if I boost it by 1 decibel. Continuing up the treble rolls off and receives emphasis at the 7.2K Hz, where it continues to roll off. Then the air range emphasizes the 12K, 15K, and 18K Hz frequencies, giving these a somewhat natural sound, which adds a bit of shine without feeling too sharp or fatiguing. Here's how All the Stars will sound like if I boost the mentioned treble and air range frequencies. Second EQ setting is the monitor profile, which lowers the bass and sub bass, emphasizes a bit of the lower mids, and mostly follows the Harman 2019 target from mids to air. I steer away from this profile as I primarily use TWS's outdoors, and lowering the bass while in Manila traffic makes them sound thin and weightless. Last is the bass EQ profile. They provide what the name says while maintaining a similar mid to air range tuning as the reference EQ. Here's how they compare to the reference EQ profile. Keep in mind that your IEMs are tuned to a specific way, so how you hear the samples right now might differ from what it actually sounds like when you get to use these. You also get a Bluetooth 5.3 connection, SBC and AAC codec options with no LDAC, LC3, or other fancy codecs, which is to be expected from this price. If you want to know how codecs affect the sound, here's the video for you. Overall, the sound is great regardless of whether or not you're indoors or out there commuting, and it deserves the hype it comes with to that regard. And on the topic of sound, I rate the technicals at a 3.65 out of 5. Technicals don't matter too much for me in TWS since I can't really do any sort of critical critical listening while I'm out and about. But to give you some perspective, the soundstage imaging, separation, and detail retrieval pretty much goes above average, so they're not too bad in that regard as well. I would say that it's comparable to the True 2, but it's of course not going to be as good as those. However, if I said this once, I've said it a million times. You don't buy a TWS just for the sound, you buy it for the convenience. And what side of the convenience, you may ask? The features and the battery life. Shit out of 5. It starts off innocent and actually seemingly pretty good, with an app integration with the Moondrop Link 2.0 where you get to change the EQ profile and what the touch controls do for either one. It's pretty limited, but it nails the essentials. What disappoints me so damn much is the implementation of both the ANC and the transparency. ANC needs microphones. Microphones are what's used to sample outside noises to find out what frequencies should it play back to cancel sound with nearly no delay. But that's the thing. It needs microphones. Decent ones. These does not have decent microphones. Here, have a listen.
Space travel mic test. Space travel mic test. Space travel test. Space travel test.
The ANC can't handle loud sounds at all, where even basic clacking of metal objects overpower it, making you hear popping sounds, while air gets pretty much amplified even while walking. But if you think that's bad, just know that these needs the ANC to be on all the time, otherwise you pretty much hear everything as if you're not wearing anything at all. And of course, by extension, transparency mode is pretty much useless just as well. Just remove them or pause the song to hear a friend or when crossing the road. It's pretty much a better experience overall if you do that. Oh, and if you look at the back of the box, it says 12 hours of total battery life with 4 hours of continuous use with ANC on. I got the full 4 hours for the first week, then it varied a lot afterward because the case doesn't hold them in properly. I'm just shaking this around. I had multiple times where I simply wanted to use them, but nope, they weren't charged because they were disconnected. And as you can see here, oh god, it disconnects with the slightest touch. I'm not even touching it, I'm just shaking it around. And to add to that, charging the TWSs themselves take another hour to complete. So you're pretty much f***ed if you had the same issue. You know it won't charge properly while commuting because guess what? If you're commuting, you're constantly moving, right? Right. Oh, and I'm not done. Touch controls are flimsy as hell and nothing can be fixed since Moondrop can't issue firmware updates through the app. That app is literally just for choosing the EQ profile and changing what the touch controls do. And did I mention that these disconnects and randomly pauses mid-song? It happened so often that I had to exchange my original pair thinking they were defective, but nope, that's just how they are. With all of that said, I placed the Moondrop Space Travel in C- tier. They sound and feel good, but the case and features like the ANC disappointed me. You could argue that they are cheap and the fact that they are working at all is good. Sure, but I would argue that if you wanted to include a feature, make it feel like a feature instead of making it feel like a gimmick. If you want something that sounds great and isn't e-waste after 1 year because batteries, buy this. Get the KZAZ09 Bluetooth module with the B pin, do a little bit of modding, and you have something with 1, a better sound, 2, better isolation, and 3, better longevity because again, batteries. However, if you're interested in the space travel too, turn on the notification bell to know when that video goes up. If you still want to get these, despite all of my warnings, links are going to be in the description. They are affiliate links, so I get a commission with no extra cost to you. So, I'm Charles, this was the Moondrop Space Travel, bye.